Hello and welcome to the Heads and Volleys podcast with me, Lee Dunn. We're in the midst of some tough times, but I am excited to share with you that I have joined Ductig Brand FC. It's pretty exciting, and I always thought it was kind of a gimmick, really, in terms of just having this little notepad that is waterproof or these cool little session plan pads. And I've always been a kind of a digital creator, whether I use Tactical Pad or some of the format, and then kind of have just a piece of paper of notes in my pocket. But with all this downtime, I've started using these new notepads that I got as part of my membership with Ductig Brand, and I'm already in love with it. It fits perfect in my pocket, even just from a simple put in my pocket and go, but to actually use it in a way that I can show the players because there's a little field on the notes, or that I can just simply have this amazing little tool handy. So definitely check out their content. You've probably seen a lot on Twitter or on social media where they'll retweet or share stuff that people are using their material for. But I have a discount code if you're interested. Head over to LeeDunneSoccer.com, and at the About Me, there'll be the link under there for a discount. So check that out. But today, I'm really excited to bring you my guest today is Paul Kelshaw. He and I have connected a lot over Twitter, and I'll just go ahead and jump right into it. Heads on Volleys, here we are with Paul Kelshaw. We're in some uncertain times right now, given the virus and us both being on lockdown, and pretty excited to be talking right now. So, Paul, welcome to Heads on Volleys.
Yes, thank you, Lee, for asking me to join you today.
Absolutely, mate. I know this is, we've connected a little bit over Twitter, and I love what you do on there. I love the constant sharing and engagement in things like Soccer Chat, and I kind of want to get into that too. But if you want to just give us a little overview of kind of who you are, where you're from, what you do.
Yeah, I'm Paul Kelshaw. I'm originally from Burnley in Northern England. I now live on Long Island in New York in a town called Merrick. Currently I'm the director of coaching of a club called Hewlett Lawrence, and I run that through my business, which is PK Soccer Inc. I have held this position since 2013, so it's been a good thing for me. I've been there for at least 7 years now.
Burnley to New York is quite a change.
Yes, I grew out just north of Burnley. It's called Rosendale, and it's a valley 20 miles north of Manchester. So it has that village feel. It's countryside. Around me is farmland. But you're less than 45, 50 minutes to a major city, and 5 minutes to a decent sized town. So it is a big thing. When I first did this, never envisioned that I would be in a big place like New York City. Probably of all my friends from England, you would have probably expected it was me that was going to stay home and stay local. So it has been a big change, but now Long Island's my home. I bring up my family here. It's I don't really see myself moving, definitely not in the near distant future.
So let me ask you, in terms of having grown up in the UK and knowing what it was like for me in terms of playing all the time, and it just being a part of the culture of what you did as a boy growing up, can you compare what the culture of soccer is like from where you are now in Merrick in terms of what it was like for you growing up?
Well, for me, I'm a big Burnley fan, and everyone from the area, you were a Burnley fan. There may have been some Manchester United fans, but you would never see a Blackburn or a Bolton or a Preston jersey. Everything was Burnley. So I was I felt like I was getting left behind when you saw all your friends going to watch Burnley with their dad. I had no idea of the the level of play. When I first went, Burnley had just won the old Division 4, which is like League 2. So I'm going to watch League 1 soccer. And just because that was the best thing, my idols growing up were Burnley players. And it's obviously, I understand there's better players, but that was the thing. You wanted the whole town and the vicinity was all about Burnley. We used to play obviously because the fields are mud baths. We would play on the and typical in England that the local tennis courts are only used for the 2 weeks of Wimbledon, and the nets are gone. So we would play on the tennis courts, and my parents' house was built in the late 70s, and which was just open field. So now it is more developed, but there was open field, and you got to play. We would play every day. We would play on the street outside my friend's house, where basically the goal was the width of the road, and it was a goal if the ball went into the dirt, the field-like area. So it was a big part of playing. Then in the summer, you could there was like we just called it the Wreck. It was a very, very slanted field, and there were goalposts, but that's where we would play in the summer when it was dry enough to play. So yeah, it was a big difference to here, especially when I first came to Long Island. I was coaching in a club on the border, the Long Island Queens border. So everywhere it was built up. You can't go on a field without a permit, which is was new to me. When I first came here, you think, oh, why can't we just play on that field? That's a nice, a nice patch of grass. Oh, whatever you do, Paul, don't go over there. That's the next town's field. You need a permit to go on that, or you need to be certain percentage district residents to use that field. So, dealing with like the limited amount of space. But like I said, growing up in a small town, in like a village atmosphere, everyone, you would meet after school, you'd meet in the school holidays, and you would, play with your friends.
And that's just missing in amongst the youth that we work with. Would you agree with that?
I would. Obviously, no one's knocking on doors and calling for friends to come and play. They're anything now. You will try. My own children will play soccer at recess. You will see like what they call a pickup game happening after school, but it's obviously parents are there, and it's all or it's supervised. So it's never going to be like those like the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s, but it is a big difference.
So then you grew up in the UK and then you ended up in the US. So I want to kind of go back to that kind of unstructured and child play. But first I want to kind of explore your pathway. So how you've ended up where you've ended up, kind of what your pathway was, coaching, summer camps, and then kind of getting into the US.
Well, when I left my high school at 16, I went to Burnley College, and I was actually education wasn't really pushed in the area that I was from. I was actually discouraged from taking A levels, so I did what is called a BTEC in sports studies.
Me too.
At Burnley College, and yes, I was basically told, Paul, A levels aren't for you, which was really just maybe a sign of the times or the area or that I grew up in. So I did the BTEC, which was 2 years, and I really excelled at that. I think it was compared to the people on the course, some people that I do remain friends with, but I just seemed to do extremely well on this course. So that was my first introduction into coaching. But what you'll laugh is this was what was seen as a good session when I was at Burnley College going towards your coursework. It did involve you would split the team into lines, and it would involve some kind of shuttle runs with some may include a ball. Then it would involve maybe passing back and forth in a square, and then you would go on to a line and shooting on the goal, and then into a game. And that was seen as you would get like top marks, top grades for that, because the session had progression or was structured compared to the just a couple of laps of the field and into a game, which was a typical session throughout my childhood. So I progressed from there. I did a sports science or sports coaching and exercise science degree from Manchester Metropolitan University. But actually the campus was Crewe and Alsager, which it's now known as MMU Cheshire.
Okay,
but
yeah.
So that's Crewe is about 40 miles south of Manchester, and you're talking maybe 10, 15 miles north of Stoke. People might be familiar with from the Premier League days. That's when I then got involved in coaching. You needed to do some assignments. Actually, my degree, there was no practically assessed coaching. It was very science-based. But really, as a kid, to try and make a little bit of extra money, the Cheshire, which is the county football development officer, was based at the university. And I went out and did some grassroots coaching in like that Cheshire area. And I just from playing university football, I was never, which I'm not sure people are familiar with so much in the US, that there's several levels of university football. There's the top 4 teams would play like the Booster on a Wednesday, and then the university would enter teams in the local district, or you'd play in the local area. So it was never, I was involved and trained, but unfortunately I was never near that first team. So I would play, but I would talk to the players, and they'd gone to the US to coach, and it was something that always interested me. In fact, I wish I'd have done it sooner. I was always under this assumption that you needed at least an FA level 2 to be able to come to the US, which was not the case. I found out with an FA level 1, you could have come. So I'd done the FA level 2 at university. It was a subsidized course, extracurricular, nothing to do with the degree. But as part of that, you had to get coaching hours. So I, was signed off hours. I'd even gone back to Burnley and to my old high school, which was in Rosendale, and I would, started coaching there, getting some hours in. And then I saw the opportunity there was a notice for Manchester United soccer schools I was thinking, this would be a really good summer job. I went to the presentation, and I was somewhat put off, only because it seemed like a high level, and actually none of the sessions were actually done in the Manchester area. The closest was Blackpool. It's about 45, 50-minute drive. So I was like, there was just a few red flags. I was thinking, well, if this isn't in Manchester, then it just didn't seem right. And I felt like I have this opportunity to come to the US to train in warm weather and get the experience I wanted. There was actually, I'd seen a position, and it was nothing to do, it was a county council job as a football development officer for the Burnley Council. And I thought you needed 2 years experience for that job. So that was my initial approach. I would come to the US, and I thought after 2 years, I'll go home and apply for, hopefully a similar kind of job will be available, and I'd have that experience. Well, then it just, as soon as you step foot in the US and start coaching, you don't really want to leave. So it was a summer progressed into me staying out for a fall, and you come out for the season, you come to the States in March, and you leave at the end of the season in November. You would be back. The winter would be the off season, and it progressed from there.
Taking a very similar approach that I took too, and I'm sure many of the Brits that you probably come into contact with have followed the same pathway. And I remember being at university in Sheffield, and it was raining sideways. It was horrible. It was freezing cold. We just finished training, and some guy from the company I traveled with was Challenger Sports. And so he said, just going to keep you guys for 2 minutes. If you're interested, you want to go to America, you want to go and coach, you want to go and get some hours in, here's my card. We're holding tryouts and stuff. And so I just took his card, and then I got home and showered and was warm and kind of thinking, well, actually, that sounds kind of nice. And so sure enough, I followed a very similar pathway to you. And something that you mentioned a lot there was hours, getting your hours in. And you just, the amount that you learn about yourself and about your own ability is so important when you spend those multiple hours on the field with those kids.
Yeah, they're also, for me, England was very territorial. So even when I was coaching in Cheshire, towns called Nantwich, just very close to Crewe, and in the close to between Alsager and Stoke-on-Trent, the kids were different. And then when you went back to my high school, coaching those kids, and then I even I had done some refereeing while I was in England, and I'd just gone up to one of the teams and said, basically, I like the way you play. Could I come in and do these? I need some hours to practice. Could I come and coach your team? And they were open, so I got access to those different kids from even, but just because England's so territorial, they would be different types of kids even within that. You're talking like a 60-mile radius of Manchester.
So then how, let me ask you, you're kind of pursuing these hours and trying to build experience. And I know that there are many coaches listening that are also just trying to get as much experience as they can. And so I guess my question will be, what would your advice be about that? And then also the second part of that, did you have kind of mentors as a hot topic? Did you have people that you kind of followed a lot, or people that helped you along the way? And maybe that's something that you found more here in the US than you did in the UK, but kind of what should people be looking to do, or what advice can we give people that are looking to get hours, and then talking about mentors too?
Well, I know it's always good if you reach out to your old school. They will always welcome back a former student. That was a big thing in me getting those hours, especially if you wanted to get hours with teenage level players. But also, where I played soccer in England, it'd be a huge field with several pitches at one location. You could I had just asked. They were they were open to it. I could explain what kind of topic I was looking to do. I can remember just off the top of my head going to one team. I wanted to work on switching play. That was the topic for my level 2, and they were happy to work with that. You also, I don't really feel like I had a mentor in England as far as coaching wise, but definitely just don't be afraid to ask. I can remember when I was at university, I'd gone to the local football development officer, and I put me on a Saturday morning program, and it was a little bit, a few extra pounds in my pocket. It gave me some chance to coach. I ended up coaching with a former Burnley player called Steve Davis, and there was actually 2 Steve Davises that played for Burnley. It was the one that had played in the early or late 80s, early 90s, but it was nothing. Now that's talking over 15 years ago, but basically got to watch him coach, got to pick up some ideas of him. And that was someone, it's not someone I'm in contact with anymore, but he then went on to manage Leyton Orient and Crewe Alexander in the Football League and the National League. So you just never know what might come by just putting your name forward to do something. That's one thing I would say, and don't be put off by the level. I can remember going into a community centre. I needed hours, and you would maybe the inner cities kids of Crewe in Cheshire might not resemble inner city kids of New York City, but they were dealing with those troublemakers, and that was a huge eye opener. Teaching those or trying to coach those type of kids, that helped me a lot as well.
It's funny you say that, because I had the same experience after working in the US, and I was based in California the whole time, and then going home to working with kids in an inner city school in Sheffield was just a complete contrast. And I think that the experience really gave me just an understanding that the kids they're not just players, that they're individuals too, and they are people. And not expecting, I think that was the biggest shock for me, was not appreciating that I was coaching kids here in the US that were wearing jeans and had never kicked a ball before. They were wearing baseball cleats, or they were wearing a baseball shirt because they're a baseball player, and this was their first foray into soccer. And that was a surprise for me, that I was literally breaking down the technique of how to kick a ball. And then looking back to the kids I was playing with in Sheffield and coaching, that was the last thing that you could ever imagine working on with kids that had grown up with the game. And that was really the foundation for me to understand that if I understand these as people first, then I'm going to be able to serve them better as a coach. Because I think that if I know that they're all diehard Burnley fans or the diehard Man United fans, they're very likely going to have a role model in that team. They're very likely going to have seen them play, or at least understand how they play and what it is about them, and understand the game in a broader context. Whereas when I'm working with kids here in the US who couldn't tell you who plays for the local MLS team, that was then kind of my jumping off point of saying, okay, I know that you probably don't know anything. And there are players that I work with now that are probably pretty good, but not really with an understanding of what is actually going on in the wider world of the game, because they don't care, or they don't pay attention to it.
Yeah, it probably took me into my, early mid-30s before I started really watching the game as a coach. When I first, as that 10-year-old, maybe going to watch fourth tier soccer in England, or third, fourth tier soccer in England. I watched some of those clips on YouTube of, and you look at the soccer and you're thinking, oh, it's up and under, it's kick and run. But I fell in love with it. It was just, everyone was a Burnley fan. So everyone's dad was a Burnley fan. So you went with that, and you just, I do feel that that's something that kids do miss out on, is people complain about the level of play at an MLS game, but sometimes just if you get behind a team, no matter how they play, I'm sure you feel the same, like being a Coventry City fan, that you'll support them, and it was it was probably going to watch Coventry City or going to watch Burnley. They put me in the position I'm in, or put you in the position I'm in now, that we're full-time soccer people, and that's something that I wish I could give to the kids that I coach.
Yeah, and so let me ask you then, because I see you do a lot of work with a lot of little kids, and so let's explore that a little bit. But then also what you are doing to give that kind of experience to those players. So that's where I see you posting a lot of your kind of core work is with those little ones, right?
Yeah. So with my club, Hewlett Lawrence, and even in the past when I had done summer camps, I would be whether you'd be the camp director, and it was always you needed a good, strong personality to be with those younger kids. You didn't want to put you might think, oh, let's put the inexperienced coach with those younger guys, but they would sometimes you could get eaten alive. So I had started coaching. I had done the summer camps. I had been taught very well from the previous coaching companies I had worked for. So now in my current club, I go into the schools. This was set up before I joined the club, but with really as fundraisers for the PTA, and to give those kids an opportunity that might not be able to play on the weekends. Obviously, the idea is that those kids will want to come and join and play, on a team on the weekend. But it's a lot of elementary school ages, especially. I go into one school that's pre-K to first grade, which is, you're talking 4 to 6-year-olds, and then the elementary schools, the bulk of it is the 2nd and 3rd grade age ranges. I didn't get any kind of coaching at that age. Really, my dad traveled a lot when I was younger, and in that late 80s was a different time of soccer in England. I started playing when I was, I'm going to say 10, around 10 years old, where you're just thrown on a team playing 11v11, but that's all like in the past. And so I'm really passionate about giving those kids an opportunity to play. And I went in with the approach. I was at my club. I thought what I wanted to do is I wanted to coach the youngest age group in my club and the oldest age group in my club, just so really just to like build the foundations, and because now I want to develop those players into travel players, or not just necessarily travel players. I want to prolong their career in soccer past the age of 13. So I have concentrated a lot on those younger ages, more so because it can be an area that gets kind of just like swept to the side, but that's where my club has the most participants. It's a big area, a big chance to for me to just to give my knowledge to more kids.
You make a really good point on that too, because it is something that is often swept away, but it's something that I feel a lot of people don't feel prepared to coach. Because I remember my own summer camp experience, and it was always like it was either the girls that ended up working with the really little ones, or it was the same guy every week because they were good at it or they had the personality or the confidence. And that just doesn't fall into the realm for a lot of people. I don't think they can really connect with players on that level.
Also with, I think a big part of this was around 2009. I just bought a house with my wife, and a big chunk of my salary went to, in fact, all my salary went to paying the mortgage. And I needed, I worked for a coaching company, and I needed coaching hours. And I had, at that time in my life, if there was a 6-hour Saturday program coaching at the club's kindergarten, their 5-6-year-olds, or I could coach my team, which might involve traveling an hour and an hour back for just to get to be coaching kids for an hour and a half. So I'd had to, and I also had that more purpose. I wasn't a teenager just doing this for gas money. I had a lot to lose, so I felt like but I also had a lot to gain. So I really went in there, and as I would expect anybody would, I gave it my all. The training that I'd received from a company called Noga Soccer, and I used to coach for a company called MLS Camps. They're the enthusiasm and the ideas, and I learned from the best. And you do a good job, and then kids love you, and they want you back, and so that was a big thing as well. Also now I can with my current job, I go into the schools and I get to see a lot of the kids, and it's not just kids that play for the club. It's kids that used to play for the club, and then you get to see the parents as well when they're picking up. And then they see you, that you're like an active member in the community, and the kids love that. And again, just trying to really give those kids the. This might maybe be a little bit too kumbaya, but give those kids the chance that I didn't have. I had not played any. May have kicked around the park, but when I was 5 and 6, I wasn't playing soccer. I know times have changed in England, but it wasn't really a thing. You joined, maybe if you were one of the top 11, you joined a team when you were maybe under 8s, under 9s, and that was the first stage. So giving these chances, these kids, a foundation to try and make my club stronger. It's been a big part of my coaching over this past 7-8 years.
Here's so many good points there, because the opportunity for these players to play in a structure, because you're right, if you're an individual and you just want to try soccer as a kid, it's really difficult to just go and join a club or go and join a team and kind of be thrown into that environment. And I'm sure there are probably people listening, shouting at the radio right now saying, that's not our club, that's not our club. And hopefully it's not. But to hit the kids on their level in the school environment, you're right in that if they see Paul Kelshaw, he's the director of coaching for their local club, and they see that he's involved, as you said, he's involved in the environment, it's such a good image. And like you say, you get to know so many kids. And one of the first things when I was hired in San Francisco was to implement a school soccer program, and pretty much doing the same thing, that we would go into school at lunchtime or in the early hours of after school programming at 3 o'clock or whenever they have early release, and playing soccer with the kids in just a pickup style, set the goals up and away you go. It gives them the opportunity to play. It gives them the opportunity to have fun. We were filling and are filling hours of coaches that are not otherwise working because their teams don't start until 4 or 5 o'clock. So lunchtime, preschool, or like early school hours are perfect when a full-time coach is not typically working. Now we were taking soccer to these kids in a way that we would never have imagined. And I'm sure there are people listening that are directors or that are coaches and trying to figure out how to get more players in their environment. And I think you nailed it perfectly there by you take the soccer to them, and you take it to them in a time and a place that works for everybody. You just can't lose, whether they sign up for you or they just leave that school environment thinking that they love soccer because they had a great time with Coach Paul. Soccer is winning there ultimately.
Yeah, this was when I first joined the club as director of coaching. This was not the my position has evolved. This was not what I had initially expected, or what I necessarily signed up for. But I'd gone in there thinking, I want to fix this. I was dealing with some coaches that were good coaches and have gone and are still professional coaches, but they were coming towards. They were actually challenger coaches, and you get placed in certain towns, and you can end up with different people each season. It's just the nature of dealing with that kind of organization. So their heart wasn't really into coaching those younger teams. There weren't that many. My perception is people weren't raising their hand to want to coach those age groups. They would maybe rather have a teenage team. So I'd gone in there and tried to fix things, and this typically isn't really my personality, but I had to take over and try and just try and make things better and get them to a better standard. And then really I became good at that.
You make a good point too, because recently I interviewed John Kokoris of the Johan Juniors, and he said the same thing that you said there, that people would rather work with the good players at an older age, a teenage age, or the team that is showing off and doing really well. Yet no one wants to work with those little ones and get them to that level. And that's twice I've heard that now. And it's so true that most coaches would probably rather find the glory than putting in the effort of corralling a bunch of 5-year-olds in how to score a goal in the middle of the playground.
Yeah, but it's I'm a firm believer though in now, like, building the foundations up. We also had a time within my club where, for whatever reason, I didn't form a travel team at the under 10 age range for boys. And it was a big blow to the club. We're typically, we're a one team per age group club. The girls will enter a travel team every other age group. And it was like, I've got to concentrate on these age groups, on those, build a foundation. So, you can't spread yourself. If you're one person, it is difficult to spread yourself. So with the desire of the club president, this was they wanted me to concentrate on those age groups and form those teams and give those teams a solid foundation.
And then the pyramid, as it should look, is wide at the bottom because there is somebody dedicated in that environment in that age group. Somebody's dedicated to growing teams and programming for those kids that ultimately then peak towards the top level of the club. And it makes total sense.
It's also helped me as a coach, because I've got, coaching friends and colleagues and associates in the community, and if they've needed a coach, youth typically is at those younger ages, I've been able to help them, and they've been able to trust me because they've known me from previous times, but they know that someone's going to go in there and care and do a good job and be enthusiastic about it. So that's, did I ever envision being coaching the elementary school ages after being in the US for over 15 years? No, but this has been an area that I have concentrated on. I still do train 2 travel teams, but this has been the bulk of it, because I get to see the most kids. It's a benefit to the club that I get to see as many kids as possible, and because I've been doing it now so long. When I first joined the club 7 years ago, they're now the oldest. Those under 9s, under 10s, they're the oldest kids in the club. So, okay, teams change faces. There's a lot of different kids, but the core of those teams and the parent coaches in charge of those teams, I know. So, somewhat, I do feel like I am stretched thin on that in some areas, but I have got to know so many people within the club, and I at least know that if you were in the club, if you've been in the club since you were 4 or 5, you've been coached by me. And although I'm not a magician, it does somewhat feel good that I was able to help those kids in some way all the way through their playing career with the club.
Yeah, and they're still there. That you had such a positive impact on them is a testament to the work that you're doing. And I think it's really funny when you look at, you originally wanted to become a football development officer, and then you find yourself out here and enjoying life and thinking that there's no way you want to go back. And then here you are now as a director of coaching and providing this opportunity, as you said, given these players the chance. And if I'm going to go full circle and go back to something you mentioned about getting hours early on, and this is a great place for coaches to get hours in a somewhat unstructured, unpressured environment. Yes, there's pressure because you're working with kids who are wild, who have all sorts of personalities and have all sorts of demands on you, but it's not like you're trying to teach these kids how to play out the back, for example. You're simply facilitating them in a way that is encouraging and challenging them, with soccer being the vehicle. So do you have maybe a couple skills, 3, 4, 5 skills that you take with you when you go and work with children of this age, or you go and work in these school environments? Or do you have kind of a checklist that you follow, something that you would, if I was to go and take over and you say, right, this is what you need to do, what would those key things be for you?
Well, going there, and this goes back to my old Noga soccer coaching days, was every kid with a ball. So our warm up or introduction is dribbling. Make it as much. Well, it's all kids with a ball at their feet, and as we progress, we may turn it into a tag based game. So it would start off with commands in a way, as far as doing the foundation moves, things like using the insides and the outsides and the soles of your feet. changing direction, those kind of moves, trying to make them comfortable with both feet, trying to get them to realize that we don't kick in soccer. We dribble, pass, and shoot, and there's a big difference. So trying to encourage them really to dribble and be comfortable on the ball. And again, going back to my first introduction into soccer was that. It was, Paul, when you get the ball, get rid, send it, whatever you want to call it. They were the things. But then on the other side of things, I remember being that newbie on the team, and you'd hear somebody's dad shout, "Skin him," thinking, get past that big kid. And I was like, so for me as well, I'm like, I don't want, no one's getting past. Well, they probably would with speed, but I thought no one's getting past me. So I'm big on those 1v1s. It's just something I was not taught to do. Again, you thought, oh, this is a good coach because he told us we can only take 2 touches, so he's encouraging us to pass, which may have its time and place, but not with, in my opinion, with 5 and 6-year-olds. So yeah, big on trying to keep that that dribbling style of player, and then we'd introduce some kind of tag-based game. My school sessions will run slightly differently, just because you're limited to time and space. These sessions are done in a school, in an elementary school gym. So when you go outside and I'm playing on the field, I can adjust the size of the field, and it's obviously you don't have the 4 walls as backup for when the ball goes out. So that would be usually with the school sessions, it's a case of a dribble-based warm-up with commands, trying to teach turns with the inside, outside, and sole of the foot, and introducing feints to try and beat a player, and then some kind of an introduction to like a opposed kind of session where there's 1 to 4 players going in to try and steal the ball or to get the ball in some way. So there is some kind of pressure. And then typically the school sessions would then, just because of the time restrictions, you're then breaking off into small-sided games. And because those kids have been at school since 8:30 in the morning, and you're running this session at 3:30 in the afternoon, that typically makes 3 teams. I'll have an assistant with me to basically just purely because of space. We'll play 2 teams. 2 teams will play while the other team gets a drink with the assistant, and we do it on a rotation. Because once you're dealing with those kids and they've not been home since 8:00 in the morning, they're tired and they do need that rest. When I'm outside, when I'm running my regular sessions, we would break off, and we could just add an extra field, and the assistant would take 1 set and I would take the other, so we can play small-sided games.
You mentioned the assistants too, which is really valuable in terms of hours. Again, that if you find somebody or some sort of programming like you're running, Paul, that you could go and learn from somebody on the job like that. So you are able to build this experience in, I guess, what you would call a safe environment with somebody who kind of knows what they're doing. And so what about your personality when you're working with these kids? You mentioned that they've been out at school, and this is something significant that I spoke about recently with a friend of mine, that these kids are probably spending more time with you as a coach than they are with their own parents sometimes during the week because of the way their schedule is. So what's your personality like when you're walking into a school with kids at 3:00 and they've been there since 8?
Well, this has had to change, and I think I'm like a fun-going, happy, friendly person, and that will always be my personality. And especially when you come to the US as a summer camp coach, that kind of summer camp vibe, not clown. That's a big mistake I've seen coaches make. I'm not going in there as a clown. I'm going in there as, as an educator. So I've had to adjust, and I will be a little bit firmer in the schools, because when they come to you after school, they do want to wind down. They have been, they've had the pressure of the teacher and learning all day, but they really, for the session to function and run properly, I have to, although I have no formal school teaching education, you pick up a lot from the teachers. You have to go in there a little bit stricter. I'm sure just from talking to me now, and from you see my sessions on social media, I'm not going in there as a drill sergeant. I just have to be a little bit firmer. But it's express yourself. I'll go in there happy and encouraging and positive. I was always taught from one coach, if I could combine like Robin Williams with Sean Dyche, or if I could combine Jim Carrey with Pep Guardiola, or Eddie Murphy with Jurgen Klopp, something like that kind of combination would be like an ideal situation to be working with these kids. On the weekends or after school, when your session, especially when you've got early morning sessions, then I'll really have to be lively and encouraging, and a lot of patience. That's a big thing as well. I have been complimented on my patience. I do sometimes. I hope I don't cross this line. I wonder, am I too patient, or have I lowered my standard? So I've made sure, especially now going into these schools, that I've made sure that I'm not lowering my standards, but lots of enthusiasm and encouragement. You will see a lot more of that, especially in my early morning sessions when kids might still be tired, or you have your sessions in the evening when the temperature drops, and those kids really do need just lots of encouragement. I do notice a lot, and I probably take this from my own personality, that they just need confidence. If you can instill confidence and belief, they'll play better, and they'll enjoy it, and they'll want to come back. So that's been a big thing. When I first came here to the US, Brazil was and still is one of the top teams. That you wanted to create a player like a Cafu or a Roberto Carlos or a Rivaldo, so everybody wanted to be Ronaldinho, and just that happy player with tricks up their sleeve, but real, like, just that kind of style. That was a big thing, especially in the early mid 2000s, of the education I received from other coaches, and that's maybe I am using different players now as role models, but yeah, trying to encourage that kind of player.
I love it. It's all summarized by how you said, like, give them the chance to play in a way that we maybe didn't. And I think that's one thing that our cultures have taught us, that we can create a lot of players that just want to play, and we can give them role models. We can encourage them to be like Ronaldinho. We have the power to do that. So, Paul, I want to commend you on your work there, because it takes a lot to go and work with these kids in these environments, and whether it's part of your job or not, it's still something that you go out and do, and it's something that you choose to do. As many DOCs may choose to take the best teams and kind of let the rest fall by the wayside, but I think fair play to you. Good work on that. And then let's wrap up here with you have your podcast too. Share a little bit about that. Hopefully people are listening to it, but if they're not, give us a little synopsis of it.
Yes, so I started I call it the PK Soccer Youth Coaching Podcast. I've always I work out by myself, basically an independent coach. I'm 37 years old. So I talked before about the assistants I work with. They're in their early 20s. They're some of them are former players. Some of them are still in college. Or so the people that I used to work in an office with other coaches, and you could feed off them. And I wanted to reconnect with a lot of those people. So I also felt like I really enjoy going on social media, especially Twitter. It's been a big part of me. I interact with the Soccer Chat guys, and they have a podcast. I've always enjoyed the content from Gary Curneen. He has his podcast, so I thought, I would like to do this, and I also wanted to try something where, a big thing now. If you want to progress up the coaching license ladder, you can't just be like before we mentioned hours on the field. You can't just be doing hours on the field. So I wanted to, I had uploaded my session plans to Twitter to try and get some feedback and to share. And I wanted to shed a positive light on the people that had an impact in my coaching. A lot of you can get bogged down sometimes with the negativity and the complaining on social media, and I felt like I wanted to, I've done this. I've done with the United Soccer Coaches or the NSCAA, gone from national to a Premier diploma, and I have done my USSF C license, and I've done other goalkeeping courses and youth license and DOC courses with both organizations, and I met some really good people from all different parts of the country. And I wanted to, with basically working independently for 7 years, I really lost touch with those people. But I wanted to reconnect, and I wanted to record it and share it with people. That there's so many people like yourself that doing real positive things in the game, and I wanted to share it. So I started doing, they won't mind me saying this, I contacted some of my closer friends, interviewed them in my living room, started off with 30-minute kind of episodes. And then I did take a break throughout the summer and the fall. And then I thought I wanted to start this up again. And I've been interviewing over Skype, over the phone, and I've been able to access coaches from across the country. At the moment, I've been interviewing people that I have had a personal connection with, whether it be co-workers or people that I've met on coaching courses. So you will see at the moment, the majority of the people I have interviewed have been basically all British, but I have interviewed Americans. I've got I have female coaches lined up that I want to interview, but it's people that have had a positive impact, and I've really enjoyed it. It's again, a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I'm sure you all agree that dealing with Anchor's been a great tool to get those messages across, and it's also helped me with confidence as well. When you're talking to these coaches and really just trying to share what they're doing, so I really enjoyed it.
I want to thank you for sharing your time and sharing your story with us today too. So, Paul, how can we follow you? I know you and I have connected on social media. Where do you post your most stuff? I know you're pretty active on Twitter, so share those handles with us.
Yes, my handles. So my Twitter handle is my name, Paul Kelshaw, at Paul Kelshaw. Same for Instagram. that's where I share most of the things. I do have a website. The website really, it mirrors my club. You may go on there thinking that I'm my own club. No, it's a mirror image of my club, but I wanted to promote myself as a coach. pksoccer.org. You can find there if anyone wanted to. My contact details are on there as well. If anyone wanted to contact, but you'll always find me on Twitter. I'm also active on Soccer Chat. I usually join in their Wednesday evening conversations. Those guys do a great job. So you could also find me on there on a Wednesday night.
Brilliant, Paul. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you, Lee. Good luck with the rest of the season when we get started.
And so, in summary, as Paul mentioned there, he's fairly active. You can always reach out to him. He's always willing to talk more too. And we actually continued this conversation for another 40 minutes or so, and just talking about what we're experiencing right now and what our process is going to be with our own podcast and our own kind of content too. So definitely check out Soccer Chat. That's a really good one to get involved with, to get going. But there'll be more coming from Heads on Volleys real soon.